This next session is the normalization of multi-cloud data set for cloud management. Super cool. And at this time, I'd like to invite to the stage Paolo and Don from Tangoe, and Bob and John from MITRE. Please give them a warm round of applause.
Hello, everybody. My name is Paolo Sellari. I work at Tangoe as a senior product manager, and I'm in charge of our cloud solution.
And I am Dawn Preston. I've been with Tangoe for 20 years, and through that journey, been from implementation all the way through now into product, and I work for Paolo.
Hi, my name is Bob Clasen. I'm a group leader for cloud enablement at MITRE. For FinOps, I've been doing that for a couple of years now. Current roles manage our enterprise FinOps team, but also I like to dust off my engineering skills and do a little hands-on, so I consider myself a practitioner as well, not just a manager.
My name's John Gallivan. I've been at MITRE for 21 years with a varied background in everything from lab management, but been working exclusively in cloud since 2015, and sort of a jack of all trades, multi-cloud engineer, and part of the core FinOps team.
So our agenda for today is going to go through a couple of things. We're going to have the MITRE team actually walk us through understanding some of the challenges that they were facing with some background and pain points, also go through some considerations and process to solution. And then we're also going to talk a little bit more about what MITRE's next steps are on the FinOps journey. And then hopefully, as time allows, we'll open up for some Q&A. So just let's jump right in. Nice.
So we'll start off with a little bit of background. First of all, who's MITRE? That's the company that pays John and my salary nicely every 2 weeks. They've been around for about 65 years or so. They're a non-for-profit organization that operates a couple of what are called federally funded research and development centers. Some of you might have heard of FFRDCs, the RAND Corporation, Jet Propulsion Lab. MITRE's in that ballpark. So we work in the public sector space. So being a non-for-profit and working in public sector, we have being frugal baked into our DNA. We have to watch every penny we spend. So the FinOps and watching our cloud spend is a very big deal for us. Our environment that our team manages, we support AWS, which is about 70–75% of our cloud spend, both pub and gov cloud. We also have a growing use of Azure, maybe 20–25% in Azure, again, some of gov and some commercial. That's growing. A lot of our enterprise workloads are moving into that, so we're expecting that to increase soon. And we have a small but very dedicated group of users in Google Cloud. It's only about 1 or 2%, but boy, those developers love it, and they don't want to give it up. So we support all three of those. I'd say overall, the amount that we manage annually is probably about a $5 million or so cloud spend for those things, just to give you sort of a ballpark of what we spend and what we manage. We have several FinOps tools. We're not just a one-tool shop to help us manage all these things. Some we have homegrown ourselves, but our primary tool that we rely on most is Tangoe's Cloud Expense Manager. And we really use it for three main things now, but there's more and more use cases as time goes on. The biggest thing right now is just splitting out our bill, right? The invoices come in every month, using Tangoe to help us allocate that to our individual MITRE project numbers. Of course, the dashboards and the visibility, trying to make it easier for not only us, but our project teams to get visibility into what their cloud spend is. And then also, we're starting to dip our toes into more optimization, doing some more of that. So you're going to see that's going to be one of our next steps for next year, digging into that a little bit deeper. So now we're going to go back about a year and a half or so from where we were, and I was actually sitting in the audience at last year's FinOps X, like you were, trying to figure out what's going on. How can we use some of this information to help ourselves out? So we had, I would say, quite a few pain points labeled out here. There were times in the morning when I woke up, my wife said I looked like the painting on the right. I looked like Monk's Scream. I think she was exaggerating, but I'm not sure. There were days when I definitely felt like that. And a lot of those things we're struggling with had to do with just all this data, right? And specifically normalizing the data that came from the different cloud providers. A lot of you in the room are very familiar with Focus and the great work that they're doing. So it's the same kind of things, right? Why in the world do they have to use different data formats? Why in the world can't they call it an account or a subscription? Why does one have to call it one has to call it the other? And then trying to munge all that stuff together into one spot is just, it can create a lot of headaches. And in our role, too, where we're trying to manage the whole enterprise spend, we had to be able to wrap our head around the data coming from all three of those different clouds. And we were getting pinged more and more, our cloud use is growing, so the managers are asking, what's up? Where's that money going? How are you spending? What are the trends? And we could answer those questions, but it seemed like it took a lot more effort, a lot more Excel magic to make it happen than it really needed to, so we were struggling with that. Specifically, too, we had some reporting gaps that were, again, pain points for us. Some of the projects, I'd say the vast majority of the projects probably just use one cloud in our team, right? They have one or the other. But there are some who are trying to show the value in comparing and contrasting with the different clouds. So for them to be able to track what their project was being charged across the things, they'd have to go into 2 or 3 different portals, pull the data together, try to mash it together, or we would help them do it. It was just a lot of effort and pain. Also, not everybody who sort of would like to have some visibility into the cloud spend actually had access to it, right? Without a third-party tool, basically the only way you could see your AWS spend is you have to give someone an AWS account in your area, and then they're going in and logging in to see the cost when maybe they don't really need to do that. Is that too much access for them? So that was another thing. How can we give more people access without having to give them access to the cloud accounts themselves? And then also just making things more consistent. People were looking at all these different places for the different data. You get different views and all those things. It's hard to sort of consistently compare and contrast, look for trends and stuff like that. So those were some of our gaps in reporting. And then the last area was executives, I think. Our managers were asking for more and more insight. And again, to be able to provide that for them across the board without us doing a whole bunch of, jumping through hoops in Excel to make that happen, that was another thing that we sort of struggled with. I know the last thing too was just, again, we mentioned that we have to split out our cloud costs among all these different internal MITRE project numbers. We literally have hundreds, 400, yeah, accounts. So every month the bill comes in, here's your total, right? And we're like, okay, fork to all these things. So a lot of challenges around that, again, with the different invoice formats, different things, and then we have to maintain our own metadata to track which project is it going to which account or subscription. That metadata changes quite a bit. Projects come and go. And so mapping all that stuff was doable. We did a lot in pivot tables. There were times I was almost crying watching you, John, with the pivot tables every month to get that bill split out. It's like we knew there had to be a better way. And so that's why I was in your seat last year trying to figure that out. To sort of summarize where we were last year too on the you can see the FinOps domains and capabilities, right? To give you sort of a feel for where we were. As far as what phase we were in, we're definitely on the inform phase, right? We're just trying to get that information out there in a way that was easy for people to consume. So a lot of our stuff was getting the data in, getting it out, and splitting out among the costs. We also, we knew more was coming. So we were trying to wrap our heads around just our general FinOps practice. And so we were trying to build the team. It used to just be John for years, him off in the corner with the spreadsheet grinding away. Then I came on board and was helping him, so we had 2. Now we're up to, we have 4 people counting us. None of us are full-time on this. All of us are part-time. So building up that team, trying to align our focus, trying to align our next steps in accordance with the FinOps Foundation framework, which was a huge help, really huge. But we also knew we wanted to partner with someone else too as well. So I think that's it for the pain points.
Awesome.
Yep.
So you had talked a little bit about this, but as it relates to the challenges you guys were facing, mainly with the data normalization and being in a multi-cloud environment, what was that point where you knew something had to change?
So the first bill that I paid for our cloud at MITRE, I think was $10,000 for the month. And now it's somewhere around $500,000 a month across 3 clouds. And the point where I knew was when I tried to open the DBR with Excel and it crashed my computer hard. And so, you know, I was new to cloud, new and trying to herd all of these cats where we had the shadow IT that built up. And so I was trying to herd all the cats and provide some governance framework. And I wasn't paying much attention to the billing at first, but I had to pay the bills. So as soon as it crashed my computer, I knew this is not going to work.
So now let's jump into the considerations and processes to a solution.
So we had a lot of things to think about. Like I said, I felt like we weren't in a bad place, but we knew there was a lot of room for improvement, right? We did have some pain. So we had to put in our thinking caps. Now we have all these cool FinOps X thinking caps that we can wear. We can break out our baseball hats next year, so when we have to think about new problems, we can use that to ponder. But one of the first things we were considering, and you heard Mike Fuller talk about this in the keynote this morning, was the build versus buy decision. A lot of people go through that. We've gone through this multiple times with different tools and different capabilities we've had to do. It's just pros and cons. Everyone's got different criteria, so there's no right or wrong answer. But for us, some of the things that we were really thinking about was, again, we're not for profit, so we don't have loads of cash sitting around. But you know, you can still spend money more wisely than spending people's time, right? So that was a trade-off. We do have developers. We do sometimes create our own tools at MITRE. We have a lot of smart people, a lot of data analysts. So we could have tapped into them some more, and we do. But you know, that was one trade-off. Can we get those people? They're all busy, right? Can we suck away their time? Will they be able to dedicate the time we need them to do this stuff? Versus just, you know, paying another person to do that who's already done it before a million times and it's a lot more efficient. I mentioned staffing, right? And Mike mentioned this too this morning. We could spend our times overseeing that, doing Kanban boards and JIRA tasks and all this kind of stuff, right? Or we could spend our time doing something else, actually getting value out of the data that could be provided by that third-party tool. And expertise. John has been doing this for years. He knew what he was doing. But where we were trying to go, we did not have as much experience with that, or how to evolve our FinOps practice. So we would have been learning while we were doing it, which sometimes is fine, but also maybe it's not the best use of our time. And that's another thing that we're factoring into. Everybody in this room is slammed, right, all the time. So there are things we would love to do. To be honest, I would have probably rather have done that than a lot of other things we had to do. But the reality is you don't have time to do everything you might want to do. So we had to think of it in terms of that as well. And then since we were sort of just getting going, the basics in reporting and stuff like that was going to be good enough for us. We didn't need anything fancy. We didn't have any crazy requirements, or we need this and we need that. That would have required a lot of customization. So for us, we were thinking whatever we could get out of the box initially would be fine. We'll build on it later. We can figure things out as time goes on. But up front, we did not have that problem. A couple other considerations that are worth noting too for us, just on a side note, and these are very particular, I think, to MITRE. We were already using Tangoe to help us with our mobile phone billing and expensing every month. So there was already some inroads with Tangoe had an understanding of how we did our billing, and the cloud billing is with the same group. And there were some synergies with going back and forth with that. So that was one big thing that we considered. And then again, the partnership aspect, right? Coming to the conference, aligning with the FinOps Foundation, going to the meetups, all that kind of partnership was great. But being able to partner as well on the tool, being able to leverage the expertise, you had already learned a lot of those lessons the hard way. Why do we have to bang our head against the wall and relearn the same thing? It's already been figured out. So if we can partner with a third party, we thought, hey, that would be great. So that's what we ended up doing. We decided to go with the buy decision. And so then we didn't have to worry about the building. And so, and that's how we ended up with Tangoe as our partner.
So, Paolo, go ahead and take us through this.
All right. Thank you, Bob and John, for walking us through that. Now, you know, when we started our journey of, you know, expanding into the cloud ourselves for customers and thinking about our principles as an expense management company and jumping into cloud, one of the first things we always do is attack the data, right? So, you know, 7, 8 years ago plus, when we were trying to figure out our first cloud bills and how we can help our customers who are just asking and asking about this, we started with data normalization. So myself and our data team immediately started ingesting as much data as we could. The first thing is to figure out how much of it is there, right? We're starting to look at this multi-gigabyte versions of data depending on how deep you want it to go. So processing power and performance are massive. How do we normalize it all together? Multi-cloud was huge. There's the same thing, differently named. How do we help people have that conversation outside of IT, outside of your cloud engineers? The way FinOps wants to collaborate, how do we help them say, these costs come from XYZ and fit the business? So we started normalizing and standardizing data immediately. So AWS, Azure, GCP, Oracle, multiple vendors looking at it, analyzing what they are, and going into those charge categories. We started looking at ingesting data from infrastructure vendors, like I just mentioned, UCaaS vendors for deeper conferencing level information to allocate costs, and ultimately even branching out to SaaS and saying SaaS is a major cloud spend. Why are we going to ignore that? What do we need to see there? License usage, how do we optimize there? How do we allocate costs for their finance team? How do we run through this process of Tangoe, which we pull everything to a normalized single data schema environment, run our processing engine in there to discover normalized categories, rates, applied taxes, uplifts, everything a finance person is asking to see in a format that fits their finance system, but also in a format that they can read and associate. Bob and John talked about they had their special component of projects associated to accounts. All of our customers have some level of complexity or some level of personal way of viewing the data. If we can't associate that metadata to these cloud costs as an additional layer, it's not enough, right? That's always the hurdle they were getting to. So how can I help my customer do that? How can I help Bob and John say, no problem. Not only did we normalize it and categorize it, and we're going to give you an entire BI layer, we'll associate the budget to it, we'll generate a GL file to your finance team exactly in their format. We'll take that metadata every day, ingest, and apply it exactly to that environment. So we walked them through this normalization and automation process for them. What we wanted to do is every single month, we're going to run through this, but every single day we're going to ingest the data. So every single day we're going to get that usage data directly from each vendor. We're going to apply their business rules. I always felt creating a partnership is very important. So that means, what are your pain points that we learned that Bob just went through? What are your finance team's needs? What are your IT team's needs, right? What is everybody's specific rules that they need to see? I want to charge back, I want to allocate, I want to do it based on, can you attach my metadata? And we run them through there to get to our processing server. So our usage management team, a dedicated data team and analysts that work with our customers day in and day out, will create those rules against each of our customers and then lock it. So this is now automated every day. And we get to focus on discovering insights, presenting insights, creating alerts and notifications. Do we have to resolve something at the end of the month? Does the bill tie in penny to penny after when you actually receive the invoices versus the meter charges? And do you need a GL report dropped off directly to your finance team in a specific format? These were the challenges. So we really focused on the data before we ever moved on to optimization, associating budget, building out SaaS solutions, processing invoices. Like, we did all those things, but we focused here first, and we focused there first with MITRE, and it allowed them to, turn that nozzle down on the pressure and take a sigh of relief, know that they had the observability they were looking for. We're able to communicate that outwardly. We're able to show it to all their managers. And now we're in the next phase of just going further and further. And this is an example here that it ultimately led to, we try to tailor fit a little bit as best we can to each customer. So for Bob and John, it was, I have exceptions I look at every month after I do all that data. And I spend a lot of time discovering those exceptions and right-sizing and fixing those exceptions. Well, again, give us those business rules. So then we applied their exception handling to that data. So not only did they get the observability, we also automated their FinOps process that they were trying to put into practice in their company so that they know that, and you can see that line trending down, right, in the upper right, that the exceptions we were discovering were then also getting fewer and fewer, and if they did appear, they were right here for them to see.
Nice. So you can see in the picture, like all this great work that Tangoe did for us, like everyone was starting to begin to see the light. The sun was rising, right? Birds were chirping in the trees. Everything was getting great. And the impact was different based on each of the personas, right? So starting with the engineering and the product teams, the developers, right? It's really hard to make them happy, especially when you're talking about cloud spend, right? But for them to be able to easily get that data, for them to be able to easily see where their spend has been, where there were increases with these simple dashboards, it was really kind of amazing. I don't even know how many examples we've had so far of, I had no idea that was my spend, or where'd that elastic cost come from? I didn't know that was coming in there, but I thought we turned those servers off. What's going on? The insights from them is just unbelievable, and we're just sort of tapping the surface with that. There's a lot more benefit going to come out of there, I'm sure. But also, we have to take care of ourselves too, right, John? It's like, hey, we're making our lives easier with this stuff as well. Again, I'm not watching John do pivot tables anymore. It saves me so many tear ducts. I don't have to cry anymore. Like Paolo was saying, the exceptions, right? So if something's not right, the metadata's not right, you don't catch it till the very end. Being able to knock those down or to get more insight into those easily, sooner, saves so much time, and that, again, frees us up to do more high-value work, which is great. And again, it makes it easier for us to bubble up at that higher level view, do what's going on across the enterprise with our cloud spend. Being able to do that from those reports, it's been a huge win for us. And especially now we want to make ourselves happy, but we always want to make our managers happy too, right? So when our Yes, they are customers too, aren't they? But they ask questions, right? And they never ask the same question twice. Different people ask different questions. So every time we would get a sort of a query from them, it'd be a one-off. We'd be going off, pulling out the spreadsheets, pulling stuff together, hurling stuff. Now we give them a canned report they can look at on demand. If they have questions about something and want to dig a little deeper, it's so much easier for us to go into the tool, clickety-click, pull a few things up. So a huge time saving for us, time saving for them on the turnaround on those reports, and it also makes them happier. And also, it's an illusion that they think we know what we're doing now, right? Because we've got these reports. I hope they're not watching the recording. But we're fooling them. If it looks like we got it together, that's great. But actually, that is a part of it, too. It's a trust thing, too, right? If they think that you do have it together, they trust the data, they're going to be more willing to act on your recommendations as well. And last but not least is our partners in finance. Being able to have fewer sort of issues once we submit the things. There's less go backs because we're tracking the exceptions better. The formatting is better. We're getting things to them in a way that's easier for them to process. We're getting it to them faster. So there's a quicker turnaround on things. You don't have to worry about bills being late. And we have some future stuff planned too where it's going to make our finance folks even happier. So, the big impact, right? Again, it's not necessarily about saving money. It's about optimizing your spend and doing things the right way and maximizing the business value. So by impacting all these different personas in different ways, that's what we've been able to do with this partnership with Tangoe.
So I do have a question, and I'm sure others would like to know. How in depth did you guys go into the actual build scenario for yourselves?
So based on that first time that the DBR crashed my computer, that's what the billing was for us. Back then is download the DBR, open it up in Excel, do some pivot tables, pull out tagging, split it out amongst different project numbers, which are not static. We have project numbers that change sometimes month by month. Projects, the consumption gets passed from one project to another. So after that, we had a developer who built, since we couldn't parse the DBR, we had a developer build a Python program that would read that data and parse it and bin it. And then I honestly don't know what it was doing, but that worked for a little while too, but it still took so much time. It took so much time of my time, and I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to spend that time. I wanted to get onto other things. But then the developer of that went on vacation. So that's as far as I went. After that, I was like, we need something. We need a partnership. We need somebody who does this. I don't want this to be my stock and trade. This is not what I do. So
there's a continuous maintenance of that data normalization that has to be maintained. That I think was, I mean, it was our struggle, right?
Well-
So I'm assuming everybody had the same struggle.
It changes. All of that changes. And do I want to be a cloud practitioner? Do I want to be a cloud engineer? Do I want to be a FinOps backend designer? I don't. I mean, there are more important things for me to spend my time on and to build a bespoke system, and then every 3 months find out that the cloud vendors have changed the source data, and now I'm in the business of maintaining an enterprise application, and I don't want to do that. So
now let's talk a little bit about what is next on your for your FinOps program.
Yes, next steps. You notice there's sunflowers. Things are getting sunnier and happier as we go along on this journey, right? There's always room for improvement on our reporting, right? There's always more to do. As you give them something, then someone's going to ask for the next thing. So we're going to try to be transforming more from informing to optimizing, trying to get our maturity more from crawling to walking. I guess we'll give up on being a runner because there's no runners anymore, I guess. So we don't have to worry about that at least. But yeah, there's always more room for improvement when it comes to reporting. Optimization is going to be one of our big things. We talked about that before, right? So seeing what's going on is great. That enables you then to go make things better, right? So more visibility into some of our savings plans and reserve instances, what resources are being underutilized, even simple things as, pausing instances on the weekends for non-prod things. It's so simple, but it's so impactful too. And just getting people used to it. I heard earlier in someone else's presentation, it's like, yeah, you can keep them on all you want, but to keep them on is going to cost you X dollars a month. That sort of changes things, right? When it's in a data center, it seems like it's free, so you don't worry about it. But it all adds up, and as more and more things go to the cloud, the cumulative effect of that is huge. So we want to work more on the optimization. Tagging, I hear a lot about tagging. We have tagging. I don't think we have great tagging yet. A lot of people struggle with it, and I think we have some struggles ahead too. How to optimize that? Not too many tags, not too few. You need just enough. The Goldilocks thing, right? So there's definitely some more work we need to do in that area as well. And then anomaly detection. Now that we've got this visibility, being able to say, percentage increase, and then also not overreacting. Just because something is an increase does not mean it's a bad thing. It could be expected, right? So getting used to all that stuff, but at least sort of looking at something spiked up, something went down, and that can lead to the sort of next level investigation, which again could lead to more optimization opportunities possibly. We'd like to be a little bit more proactive. Right now it's very reactive. And it's usually like once a month. It's like, hey, what happened? Why did that spike up? So getting ahead of that a little bit more, budgeting, planning, maybe even some forecasting, doing some of that stuff as well. And then again, partnerships, not only with our friends at Tangoe, but within our organization. There's a lot of culture stuff that needs to be going on, working more closely with FinOps, evangelizing FinOps, again, more and more throughout the whole organization. These are things we want to do a little bit more on the next year. And this chart here sort of summarizes sort of where we are. Some of our focus areas, again, on that FinOps, the domains and capabilities things, shifting more from the inform into the optimize, and also just trying to mature our FinOps practice itself, maybe stepping into some of the governance and policy as well, once we sort of figure out some of that optimization stuff. So that's what we're hoping to do in the next year or so.
So how do you guys look at this and then figure out what your next set of priorities are? How do you put that into an organizational fashion?
that's a really tough question. Because often the answer to that is everything's a priority all the time, every day. And so there's a give and take that happens. And I have to say that, part of the give has been getting to a normalized view of what we are spending and where, and being able to say, like, this is important costs that we need to track. Our company does a lot of R&D, so there's a lot of volatility, and there's a lot of projects that come and go with absolutely no concern for what those are costing. So it's list price, but having the centralized dashboard to be able to see those trends over time helps us drive towards what's really important. So rate optimization through purchasing savings plans and things like that doesn't always make sense for us, because 8 months of heavy usage can change to 4 months of near zero usage for a project, and that's pretty difficult. So I don't know if I'm answering your question the way you wanted, but
No, that's reality, right? For you guys, is that your priorities could change at really any
Right.
moment. And I think that was the important part that I wanted the audience to hear is you could think that your priorities are these particular things now, but then next quarter they could completely flip upside down.
well, and I thank Bob as well, because I've spent so many years with the blinders on, heads down, buried in spreadsheets and wishing that there was a better way, that Bob has the ability to keep us, he's the one that said, have you read about this FinOps framework? And I said, I will. And he's the one that keeps it and drives us towards that. And it's just made a huge difference in our practice.
So we do have some time.
You did forget about your ask recently, which was an I told you so button
Yes.
that allows you to talk to your business to say, here's what we did. I told you we should do this.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll get that someday.
Awesome. So that we do have some time for some Q&A. So any questions from the audience for the MITRE team?
Yeah, let's see if this works. If it doesn't, oh, it died. While we fix it, let's give them a big round of applause to start with. And then, if I do use the catch box, it's a catch box. I'll throw it. You catch it if it works. Otherwise, first question here. What are your questions? What are your deepest desires? Thank you.
Wow, this is actually the first time I'm actually doing this.
Check.
You mentioned invoice allocation. How granular do you guys go with that allocation?
So our invoice allocation is a net zero. Every penny has to reconcile. And the granularity is all the way down to the penny. So every month I get a bill for one of the cloud providers, and the split for that bill might be split across 250 to 300 different cost centers, with the top spend being $50,000, the bottom spend being 1 penny.
Is it down to, say, the application, where the reason why I'm saying that is because we're having a similar issue ourselves, where we, every quarter we pretty much have to do sort of like a true up based on consumption, and we are allocating our invoices based on consumption, but we're doing that at a divisional, subdivisional level, but we're not going down to like the accounts, the group of accounts, the applications within those accounts, because there's several, obviously that there's several line items that don't show up on your consumption, but they're available when you get your invoice at the end of the month. So I'm curious to know, or I'm curious to see how, you guys have been able to accomplish that. Or maybe I need to talk to Tangoe later on about that too.
Mine? Okay. So we start by pulling the cure reports from the vendors, obviously, so that we could by getting it every day, we get its lowest level of granularity. So down to what we've standardized, again, this conversation of normalization of data, we have our own standardization mapping from each of them, right? So their service is to one of our categories we find their set of services are subcategories and so on and so forth. So we can do a allocation of cost down all the way from a vendor level to a cost center to a categorization, which could be a storage, a virtual machine, an EC2 compute, from further down, the type of storage, the date and time it happened. So that's why we can go all the way from, it was 1.3 million down to it was 13 cents on this day for this compute amount tied to this project, because the tags are so critical that they're able to give us the ability to tell them if your tag 2 is your environment, your tag 3 is your project, and these are your accounts, right? And then these are your internal metadata of association. Well, then we have the entire bucket of data. This normalization of data allows us to show MITRE top down at any point where they want to start. Today's a conversation about this cost center, or it's a conversation about this project, or it's a conversation about storage, right? And I don't care the vendor anymore. I care about the topic,
Exactly.
right? And then the reconciliation is important because at the end of the month, AWS sometimes doesn't match penny to penny. They take a few days before they go backwards and update.
Yeah.
So we run a reconciliation at the end of the month afterwards to make sure, hey, by the way, as we move on, legacy is penny to penny. You're locked in, we close it, right? We turn the key, and their trending historical can stay. So then they can see true trends. They can build anomaly detection, or they can build alerting against those trends. But to your original question, I'll go as deep as the data will allow me to go, because some days you want it summarized, some days you want to find the penny.
Thank you. So I'll see you at the booth.
There's someone behind you first. Who is this back here? Someone? Did you have a question?
Hi. Oh, wow. Sorry, that's loud. My name's Chris Harris. I'm part of Datadog. I'm also part of the Focus specification effort. I was curious to know, with all the normalization and for the last 14 months we've been doing normalization. It's a pain, and I'm sure you guys know. Do you guys see your future converging with Focus? Do you see yourself in parallel? Why or why not? I'm not trying to sell Focus. I'm just curious.
No, I'm also part of Focus. So myself and my data engineer, Cedric, who is here up front. When we joined FinOps, the first thing all of us came together was, did you read about the Focus section? Because it's what we did, right? It's what we spend many years doing. Literally, we maintain a standardization, categorization mapping of all of these different services across multi-cloud providers. And Focus wants to standardize that globally. So we immediately wanted to join in and collaborate. So I think the great part of Focus that I like is this agnostic collaboration of everybody sharing what they've done and what they see, who has challenges, who has potential solutions, right? So we did recently just join, and we're kind of trying to get grips of what's going on, and we intend to come in and share. One, learn first, what have you done? It's a massive team, part of Focus. And two, kind of share, here's what we've done as part of the spirit of that collaboration, and kind of see where it falls in. I think personally, we will have to at some point align, because then Focus doesn't work, right? I can't sit here and say, well, we'll just do it our way, because as everybody tries to align and create a standard, it only works if we all buy in. So are we going to change tomorrow? Probably not. Are we going to share and collaborate and look to see what that change can look like? Absolutely. I think we have to. And it's the only way I can support, gentlemen like Bob and John, who at some point are going to say, hey, we're FinOps practitioners. We want to standardize to that Focus level of categorization. Of course, then I have to provide that for them.
That's great. We'd love to hear more about your experience, and maybe we can chat after. Cool.
One up here? Yeah. I won't throw it behind your head.
Appreciate that. Question for the MITRE team. I'm new to FinOps, but I'm not new to public sector. So I wondered what kind of friction you encountered when you're trying to take telemetry out of sensitive areas, FedRAMP boundaries, or DISA environments or IC environments. Are you finding that's a hard thing to collect? You having to do a lot of sneaker netting for those air gap systems, or were you able to connect those somehow?
So we fortunately don't have to deal with any of the air gap systems. My whole world used to be air gap systems until I moved to cloud and moved to telework. But we haven't had to deal with that. And it's an excellent question because there's a lot of inference that could be made from dollars and cents on a page with a correlation to where it came from. So maybe that's something that we should talk about a little bit more.
So one of the things we have learned, right, since we've been doing this internal, so we have control of this site. These are supporting our federal agencies, but it's MITRE people, right? So it's a different thing. But a lot of other MITRE people that we work with who aren't in internal IT are doing that type of stuff, and they're running into real headaches, the ones you're talking about. Painful headaches, right? Dealing with DISA. I used to work at DISA. Yep. So there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. But one of the things we're able to do with the tool is at least we can show others the art of the possible. Hey, did you know if you had access, you could see this? And boy, your sponsor would really be happy if they could see that. So that's one of the things we've been working more with our partners within the rest of MITRE, showing what we're doing, and that's helping them do their job a little bit more too.
Great questions. We have a little time for one more, maybe? Any others? Takers? Okay, well, let's give one more round of applause to our panel.
Thanks for watching. Check out more FinOps X 2024 content on our YouTube channel on the 2024 playlist. Support our channel by liking, subscribing, clicking the notification bell, and by leaving comments and questions for our speakers. We appreciate your support.